first time I saw her, she was shackled in the dim cargo bay of the Icarus, her golden eyes burning like twin suns against the cold steel of her cell. Her name was Zyra, and I knew instantly she was trouble. I had been on enough missions to recognize the dangerous ones, not the kind with brute strength or oversized weapons, the truly dangerous ones. The ones who could slip into your mind, whisper things you didn't want to hear, and make you question everything you thought you knew. Zyra was one of them. Captain Vance had captured her on Valtrex 9, a lawless moon riddled with outlaws, warlords, and exiled syndicates. She had been alone, which in itself was odd for a Zalarian. Her kind rarely traveled without a network, a web of influence spanning entire systems. Yet there she was, bound in suppressive cuffs, looking like she had chosen to be caught. I stood outside her cell, gripping my rifle. "You're awake." She tilted her head, lips curling into something between amusement and curiosity. "And you're observant." Her voice was like warm honey laced with venom. I didn't reply. I had been assigned to guard her until we reached Epsilon Prime, where the Council would interrogate her. She was a terrorist, a seductress, a manipulator. The warning had been clear. Don't listen to a word she says. She studied me, eyes tracing the reinforced plating of my armor, the steady way I held my weapon. "You're different from the others." I ignored her, stepping closer to check the restraints. They glowed faintly, humming with energy. If she tried anything, the cuffs would deliver a surge strong enough to scramble her nervous system for hours. She let me inspect them without protest, her gaze never leaving mine. "They call me a monster, you know." I met her stare. "Are you?" She smiled. "Wouldn't you like to find out?" I turned away. That was exactly the kind of game I wasn't going to play. For hours I sat outside her cell, silent. Zyra, however, had no interest in silence. She spoke in soft, deliberate tones, like she was weaving a trap. "Humans are fascinating," she mused. "So rigid, so full of rules. You think shackles make you safe? That cages hold power?" I kept my eyes on the door, scanning for any sign of movement in the corridors beyond. The ship was quiet, save for the hum of the engines. She leaned forward, close enough that I could see the faint shimmer of her skin. Solarians had bioluminescence, subtle in light, but unmistakable in the dark. "You don't trust me." "You're a prisoner," I said flatly. "That's not an answer." I didn't give her one. Hours passed, but sleep never came easy on duty. I stayed alert, rifle across my lap, watching. Zyra sat in the center of the cell, her posture relaxed but her eyes calculating. She was waiting, watching, planning. "You know," she said, after a long stretch of silence, "I could have killed them." I frowned. "Who?" "The ones who captured me." She stretched her fingers, testing the limits of her restraints. "They thought they were smart. I let them take me." I studied her carefully. "Why?" Her smile was slow, deliberate. "Maybe I was looking for you." I didn't react, though something in my chest tightened. She was trying to get under my skin, twist the moment into something more than it was. I wouldn't let her. Zyra sighed, settling back against the wall. "I bet you think you know how this will end. You deliver me to the council. They interrogate me, maybe execute me. You go home with your conscience intact." She turned her head slightly, the glow of her eyes catching the light. "But you don't know anything, do you?" I stayed silent. She smirked. "That's what makes you interesting." I checked the time. 5 more days until we reached Epsilon Prime. 5 days of mind games, of watching her every move, of resisting whatever trick she tried to pull. Zyra tilted her head. "What's your name?" I hesitated. "Come on," she coaxed. "We're going to be stuck together for a while. Might as well have something to call you." I exhaled slowly. "Reed." She grinned. "Reed." She rolled the name over her tongue like she was testing the weight of it. "I like it." I shook my head, leaning back against the wall. It's just a name. We'll see. Silence stretched between us again, but it wasn't empty. It was charged like a storm waiting to break. I had no idea what I had just gotten myself into. The alarms blared, slicing through the ship's quiet hum like a blade. I shot to my feet, rifle at the ready, instincts kicking in before my mind caught up. The flashing red lights overhead confirmed what my gut had already told me. Something was wrong. I activated my comm. Bridge, report static, not good. I turned toward Zira's cell. She sat exactly where I'd left her, bound in those suppressive cuffs, watching me with that same infuriating calm. If she was surprised, she didn't show it. Let me guess. She murmured. Not part of the plan? I ignored her, keying into my HUD to scan for ship-wide activity. Multiple internal breaches. Someone had disabled the security grid. That meant one thing. This wasn't an external attack. Someone inside had let them in. I moved fast, locking down the corridor leading to the brig. The automated defenses should have kicked in, but the system was sluggish. It had been tampered with. Heavy boots echoed down the hall. Shadows moved just beyond the flashing emergency lights. I dropped into a crouch, leveling my rifle. The first mercenary rounded the corner, his silhouette massive in the dim light. I squeezed the trigger and a precision shot caught him in the throat. He crumpled before he could fire a shot. The second one wasn't as slow. A blast tore past my shoulders, scorching the air with ionized heat. I rolled behind a supply crate. Gritting my teeth, more were coming. Looks like you're outnumbered, Zira said. I shot her a glare. Stay quiet. I could help, you know. I exhaled sharply, popping up to take another shot. A merc dropped. Another took his place. Too many. I switched tactics, tossing an EMP grenade down the hall. It detonated with a sharp crack, shorting out their optics and comms. The merc stumbled, disoriented. I took my chance, charging forward. Close quarters combat was messy, but I didn't have the luxury of distance. My rifle swung, cracking across one soldier's helmet while my boot drove into another's gut. A blade flashed toward me. I barely dodged, the edge slicing through my armor. Pain flared, hot and sharp, but I didn't stop. I twisted the merc's arm, forcing him to drop the knife, then drove my elbow into his throat. He went down, gasping. 3 bodies, but there were more coming. Zira's voice cut through the chaos. You need me. I glanced back. She was still locked up, still bound, but that look in her eyes was different now. Calculating. I had 2 choices. Leave her locked up and fight this battle alone, or take the risk. I cursed under my breath and moved to the control panel. My fingers hesitated for only a second before I overrode the restraints. The cuffs released with a hiss. Zira stood, rolling her shoulders as if shaking off an invisible weight. Her golden eyes gleamed in the flashing red lights. About time, she said. She moved like lightning. Before I could react, she was on one of the fallen mercs, yanking his weapon free. Her body twisted in a blur of motion, her first shot clean and precise. A headshot. Another merc rounded the corner. Zira lunged, moving so fast she was a streak of silver and blue. Her knee drove into his chest. Before he could cry out, she snapped his neck with an efficient twist. I stared, breathing hard. She grinned. Don't look so shocked, Reed. I shook myself and focused. More are coming. I hope so. She purred. Together we moved through the ship. For someone who had been shackled for days, she fought like she had never been restrained at all. Every movement was fluid, every strike precise. She was terrifying. And effective. We reached the bridge to find the doors locked. Someone had barricaded, themselves inside. Vance. I knew it before I even tried the access codes. Zira leaned against the bulkhead, catching her breath. Your captain sold you out, she said, not even trying to soften it. I clenched my jaw. Think about it, she continued. How else do mercenaries get past security without an inside man? I had thought about it. I'd noticed Vance acting off for weeks. whispering into his comm when he thought no one was watching, delaying orders, avoiding direct eye contact. But I hadn't wanted to believe it. He turned off the ship's defenses. I muttered, "Let them in. He planned this." Zira smiled. "Told you this wouldn't be a simple mission." I stepped toward the control panel and initiated a manual override. The bridge doors hissed open. Vance stood at the helm, weapon raised. Well, he drawled. "Didn't think you'd make it this far." I trained my rifle on him. "Stand down." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, Reed, you really think you're the hero here?" His gaze flicked to Zira. "You just let a Zalarian out of her cage. Do you even know what you've done?" I didn't lower my gun. "You let mercenaries onto the ship." His expression didn't change. "And yet I'm still standing. What does that tell you?" It told me he had more cards to play. Zira moved beside me, arms crossed. "Vance, was it?" She mused. "You're not as clever as you think." His jaw twitched. "Shut up, alien." "Touchy," she murmured. The tension in the air was thick. Then, movement. Vance shifted, and I barely had time to react before he fired. I tackled Zira out of the way, the blast scorching past us. I hit, the floor hard, rolling to absorb the impact. Zira moved faster. 1 second she was beside me, the next she was on Vance. They struggled, her agility against his brute force. He threw a wild punch. She ducked, countering with a sharp elbow to his ribs. He stumbled. She struck again, this time an open palm to his throat. He gasped, staggering. I was on my feet in an instant, rifle trained. Vance froze. Zira exhaled, brushing stray strands of silver-blue hair from her face. "That was fun." Vance glared at me. "You don't get it, do you?" His voice was hoarse. "She's using you." I clenched my jaw. "Look around, Reed. You think she's innocent? You think this was all just bad luck?" His lip curled. She knew this would happen. Zira didn't deny it. And suddenly I wasn't sure which of them was telling the truth. Vance was bleeding from the corner of his mouth, breathing hard, his eyes burning with something between rage and triumph. Even with my rifle trained on him, he smirked, like he still had the upper hand. Zira stood beside me, arms crossed, her golden gaze unreadable. She didn't look triumphant, but she didn't look concerned either. That worried me. I pressed the barrel of my rifle against Vance's chest. "Explain." He wiped the blood from his lip with the back of his hand. "Think, Reed. You really think a Zalarian, this Zalarian, was captured by accident?" He let out a sharp laugh. "You don't know what she is, do you?" I didn't. Lower my weapon. "Then why don't you enlighten me?" Zira sighed beside me. He's stalling. Vance's smirk widened. "You're damn right I am." Then the explosion hit. The Icarus lurched violently, throwing me sideways. My shoulder slammed into the bulkhead, pain flaring down my arm. The emergency sirens wailed, drowning out everything. Smoke filled the bridge. Sparks rained from the overhead. Consoles. I coughed, trying to blink through the haze. The ship had been hit. Hard. Vance was gone. I cursed, scanning the area. He'd used the blast as cover. Smart, Zira was already moving. She gripped my arm, pulling me up. "We need to go." I shook my head, trying to clear it. "Vance, he's not our problem anymore." She tugged me toward the door, urgency in her voice. "The ship is under attack." I hesitated. My whole life, my whole career had been built on structure. Orders. Chains of command. Following the mission no matter what. Vance was my superior. If I left now, I'd be abandoning my duty. But Vance had betrayed us, and Zira had saved my life. I didn't have time to debate. Another explosion rocked the ship, and the deck beneath us groaned. Zira's fingers tightened around my wrist. "Reed." I made my decision. We ran. The corridors were chaos. Fire spewed from ruptured pipes, bodies lay sprawled, some dead, some groaning in pain. I recognized a few of them, the crew, People I had trained with, eaten with, fought beside. Now, they were nothing more than casualties in someone else's game. Escape pods, I said, shoving past a fallen bulkhead. We can't stay on the Icarus. Zira kept pace beside me. Agreed. We sprinted through the failing ship, dodging collapsing structures and scattered debris. The scent of burnt metal filled my nose. My heart pounded, adrenaline drowning out everything else. Ahead, the escape pod bay loomed. The door was still intact, but I could hear shouting inside. I slowed, signaling for Zira to stay back. Carefully, I edged forward, rifle raised. Inside, 3 mercenaries stood near the launch controls arguing. One of them, a burly, scarred man, slammed his fist against the console. "The hell do you mean locked out? The override should have worked." Another merc, smaller but wiry, shook his head. "Something's wrong with the system. I told you we should have taken the bridge first. I didn't give them time to finish." 2 shots, clean and quick. The burly merc dropped instantly. The second one barely had time to register what had happened before Zira lunged past me, closing the distance with inhuman speed. Her fingers wrapped around the last merc's throat. He struggled, gasping, but she was stronger. She lifted him, effortlessly, his boots scraping against the floor. His eyes widened in terror. Please." She tightened her grip. "Zira," I said sharply. She didn't release him immediately. Her golden eyes glowed in the dim emergency lights, and for the first time I saw it, the predator beneath the charm, the part of her that wasn't human. Slowly, she exhaled and let go. The merc collapsed, gasping, clutching his throat. I kept my gun trained on him. "How many more of you are there?" He coughed violently, eyes darting toward Zira, then back to me. Too many." Not a helpful answer. Zira knelt beside him. "Who hired you?" The merc shook his head quickly. "I don't know, we just got the job through the syndicate. Said to take the ship, grab the Zolarian." He swallowed hard. "That's all I know." Zira watched him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, she stood and shot him. I flinched at the sharp crack of the blast. "Seriously?" I muttered. Zira didn't look at me. He would have tried to kill us the second we turned our backs. She wasn't wrong. I exhaled and turned toward the escape pod controls. The mercs had been right. The system was locked. I tapped into my wrist console, trying to bypass the security. Zira leaned against the wall, watching me. "You're really not going to ask?" I kept my focus on the screen. "Ask what?" "About what Vance said. About me." I paused for half a second, then kept working. "If you wanted me dead, I'd be dead." She tilted her head slightly, studying me. "That's not an answer." I didn't give her one. The override finally kicked in. The pod doors hissed open. I grabbed Zira's arm and pulled her inside. "We're leaving." She didn't resist. The pod launched. The Icarus shrank behind us, burning against the void of space. I didn't know where we were going. I didn't know what Zira really was. But I knew one thing. This wasn't over. The escape pod drifted through space, its interior, dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. The hum of the life support system was the only sound, a stark contrast to the chaos we'd just left behind. I exhaled slowly, gripping the edges of my seat as I watched the Icarus burn in the distance. Zira sat across from me, legs crossed, arms draped over her knees. She looked unbothered, like she hadn't just walked through a battlefield, like she hadn't snapped a man's neck without hesitation. I didn't trust her. I also didn't have a choice. I turned toward the console, scanning for any nearby signals. "We need to find a landing point." Zira smirked. "No, you need to find a landing point. I'm just along for the ride." I clenched my jaw. "Don't push me." She raised an eyebrow. "I'm not the one who pulled me into an escape pod, am I?" I ignored her and focused on the readout. The pod's navigation was still functional, though fuel was limited. Nearby planets flashed across the display, most uninhabitable. One caught my eye. Varos 3. It wasn't exactly friendly territory, but it was our best shot. An industrial world, mostly run by corporations and crime syndicates. If we landed there, we could disappear, at least for a while. I set the course. We're heading to Varos 3. Zira watched me carefully. You sure that's a good idea? No, she grinned. At least you're honest. The pod trembled. As we entered the atmosphere, the outer shell heated up, flames licking at the viewport. I gripped the armrests, bracing for impact. The landing wasn't smooth. The pod slammed into the ground, skidding across rocky terrain before jerking to a sudden halt. The impact threw me forward, my harness digging into my chest. Silence. For a long moment, I just breathed, waiting for my body to register if I was still in one piece. Zira was the first to unbuckle, stretching lazily like she'd just woken from a nap. Well, that was fun. I released my harness and stood, wincing at the stiffness in my muscles. Through the viewport, I could see the landscape, dark city spires in the distance, neon lights blinking in the hazy skyline. Varos 3 was alive, teeming with movement even in the dead of night. We need to move, I said. Zira tilted her head. What's the rush? You think someone's waiting for us? I met her gaze. I think if the mercs knew about the Icarus, they'll know we escaped, and they'll come looking. She rolled her shoulders. Then let them. I gritted my teeth. Do you ever take anything seriously? Her smirk faded just slightly. Only when it matters. I grabbed a weapon from the emergency supplies. A compact blaster, nothing fancy, but enough to handle trouble. Zira didn't bother arming herself. She didn't need to. We stepped outside into the cold air of Varos 3. The ground was rough, metallic dust swirling around our boots. In the distance, towering skyscrapers loomed, their neon signs flashing advertisements in languages I barely recognized. The air smelled of oil and burnt circuitry. Zira took a deep breath, stretching like she was soaking it all in. I love places like this. I adjusted my grip on my blaster. You would. We started toward the city. The streets were alive with movement, traders, mercenaries, smugglers, people who didn't ask questions as long as you had credits, perfect for disappearing. We needed shelter, supplies, a plan. I glanced at Zira. Do you have any contacts here? She grinned. You finally want my help? I want to not die, I muttered. She chuckled. Same thing. We wove through the crowded streets, past vendors selling everything from illegal weapons to cybernetic implants. Zira moved with purpose, like she belonged here, like she owned the place. Finally, she stopped in front of a rundown bar, its sign flickering with half-dead neon letters, the Hollow Fang. Here? I asked skeptically. She shrugged. Trust me. That was asking a lot. Inside, the bar was dimly lit, the air thick with smoke. A mix of species filled the room, most of them dangerous-looking. Conversations were hushed, drinks were poured without smiles. Zira walked straight to the counter, leaning against it like she was greeting an old friend. The bartender, a grizzled older man with cybernetic eyes, looked up. The moment he saw Zira, his expression soured. You have some nerve showing your face here. Zira smiled. Missed me, didn't you? The bartender exhaled slowly. What do you want? Zira gestured toward me. We need a place to lay low. And information. He snorted. Information costs. Zira slid a small metallic chip across the counter. This should cover it. The bartender picked it up, scanned it, then whistled low. Where'd you get this? Zira smirked. You know better than to ask. He eyed her, then glanced at me. And him? A complication, she said. I crossed my arms. I'm standing right here. The bartender grunted, then gestured, toward a back room. Go, before someone sees you. Zira didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed my wrist, pulling me along. Once inside, I turned on her. What the hell was that? She plopped onto a worn-out couch. That was me, getting us what we needed. You didn't even ask what I needed. She smirked. Oh, Reed, I already know what you need. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to suppress my frustration. Then start talking. Who were those mercs? Why were they after you? And what the hell did Vance mean when he said I didn't know what you were? Her expression shifted, just a flicker, but I caught it. For the first time since I met her, she hesitated. Then she sighed and leaned forward. All right. You want the truth? I nodded. She met my eyes, her golden gaze sharp. I wasn't captured by accident. I let the Icarus take me. I felt my stomach tighten. Why? She exhaled. Because I needed to find someone. I frowned. Who? She hesitated. Then, quietly, she said, You. The air between us grew thick. I didn't know what was more dangerous, the mercenaries hunting us or the woman sitting in front of me. I stared at her, my grip tightening on the blaster at my side. You're going to need to explain that. Zira leaned back in her chair, her golden eyes studying me with a mix of amusement and something else, something I couldn't quite place. I just did, she said. That wasn't an explanation, I snapped. That was a vague, ominous statement meant to make me ask more questions. Her smirk widened. And here you are, asking more questions. I exhaled through my nose, forcing myself to stay calm. Why were you looking for me? She tilted, her head considering. Then finally she sighed. Because you're special, Reed. I scoffed. Not an answer. She rolled her eyes. Fine. Because someone is trying to kill you, and I'm the only reason you're still breathing. That shut me up. I blinked at her, trying to process her words. You expect me to believe that? She shrugged. Believe what you want, but think about it. Who sent you on that mission to transport me? Why was Vance there? Why did the Icarus get hit so easily? I clenched my jaw. You think it was a setup? I know it was a setup, she corrected. And not just to capture me. They wanted you dead too. I swallowed hard. My entire career, I had followed orders without question. But now, the pieces were clicking together in ways I didn't like. My Icarus had been well armed, and yet the mercs had taken it down in minutes. Vance had been far too calm, like he had known exactly what was coming. And Zira, she had been waiting. I forced myself to focus. Who's behind it? She hesitated, then said, The Dominion. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. The Dominion wasn't just some syndicate or mercenary group. It was a shadow organization, rumored to have hands in everything, from planetary governments to black market weapons deals. No one knew exactly who ran it, but everyone knew not to cross it. I shook my head. That doesn't make sense. Why would the Dominion care about me? Zira gave me a long look. Because you're not who you think you are. My stomach twisted. What the hell does that mean? Before she could answer, the door burst open. I moved on instinct, raising my blaster, but Zira was faster. She lunged, grabbing my arm and shoving me sideways just as a barrage of gunfire tore through the space where I had been standing. We hit the floor hard. The couch exploded in a shower of stuffing and splintered wood. I barely had time to breathe before Zira was dragging me toward the back exit. Move! We stumbled into the alley just as another round of gunfire shredded the walls behind us. Friends of yours? I panted. Zira didn't answer. She grabbed my wrist and pulled me into a sprint, weaving through the narrow streets. The neon lights above cast strange shadows, the city humming with distant sirens and mechanical drones overhead. I risked a glance back. 4 men, all armed, all moving fast. I cursed. They're gaining. Zira yanked me into a side alley, pressing me against the wall. Stay quiet. Barely had time to protest before she pulled a small device from her belt and activated it. A thin shimmer spread across us, distorting the air. A cloaking field. We stood still as the men rushed past, their weapons raised. Find them, one of them barked. They couldn't have gone far. I held my breath, heart hammering. The men scanned the area, their helmets glowing faintly with infrared sensors. The cloaking field wasn't perfect. If they got too close, they'd see through it. Zyra pressed a finger to her lips, then slowly reached for something beneath her jacket. A blade. Sleek, curved, alien. I tensed as one of the men stepped closer. His visor flickered as if trying to adjust. He was a foot away. Too close. Zyra moved. Fast. She lunged, her blade slicing through his armor like it was paper. He let out a choked gasp, eyes wide with shock as he crumpled. The others turned. Too late. Zyra grabbed the fallen man's gun and fired, dropping another before they could react. I snapped out of my daze and fired as well, hitting the third in the leg. He collapsed with a shout, clutching his wound. The fourth turned to run. Zyra didn't let him. She moved like lightning, grabbing him by the throat and slamming him against the wall. He gasped, struggling, but her grip was like iron. "Who sent you?" she demanded. The man coughed, his helmet cracked from the impact. You know who." Zyra's eyes darkened. "Say it." He swallowed. The Dominion." I felt my stomach drop. Zyra exhaled through her nose. Then without a word, she tightened her grip. The man let out a strangled sound, and then went limp. She let his body fall. I stared at her. "Did you have to kill him?" She gave me a flat look. "Yes." I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process. The Dominion was after me. They had sent people to kill me. And Zyra, somehow, was the only reason I was still alive. I looked at her, trying to keep my voice steady. "You said, 'I'm not who I think I am, start talking.'" She hesitated. Then finally she said, "You're part of something bigger than you realize, and if you want to survive, you need to trust me." I didn't trust her, but at this point, I didn't have a choice. We ran through the neon-lit alleys of Viros 3, past traders who barely spared us a glance, past rusting machinery and the thick scent of oil and ozone. My mind was spinning, replaying Zyra's words over and over. "You're part of something bigger than you realize." I had spent my whole life believing I was just another soldier, just another pawn in a system that didn't care whether I lived or died. But now, the Dominion wanted me dead. And Zyra, the woman I had been assigned to transport, was the only reason I was still breathing. We ducked into an abandoned warehouse, the metal doors groaning as Zyra sealed them shut behind us. I bent over, catching my breath. "We need to stop running and start fighting," Zyra smirked. "Finally, thought you'd never say it." I straightened, meeting her gaze. "But I need answers first. No more half-truths." She studied me, her golden eyes searching for something. Then finally she nodded. "The Dominion isn't after you because of who you are," she said. "They're after you because of what you are." My skin prickled. "What does that mean?" Zyra took a slow breath. "You're not just some soldier, Reed. You were engineered." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "That's not possible." "It is," she said quietly. "You were part of a program the Dominion started years ago, Project Echelon. They wanted to create the perfect operative, someone who could fight, adapt, and survive in any situation, someone who could think like a human but was stronger, faster, better." I shook my head. "I grew up on Terra 4. I had parents." She gave me a sad look. "No. You had memories implanted to make you believe that. Your real life started in a Dominion lab." The room tilted, my hands clenched into fists. It couldn't be true. It shouldn't be true. But deep down, I knew it was. The way I had always been faster, stronger than the soldiers around me. The way I never got sick, never hesitated in combat. It had never been training. It had never been luck. Zyra stepped closer. "The Dominion was going to activate your programming soon. That's why they sent you on that mission, because once you were back under their control, they'd turn you into their perfect weapon." I swallowed hard. "Then why did you stop them?" She hesitated. Then quietly, she said, "Because I know what it's like to be used." My breath caught. She looked away, crossing her arms. "I wasn't always free. I was supposed to be a tool just like you. The only difference is, I escaped before they could finish the job." Something tightened in my chest. I had seen Zyra fight, had seen her move with a precision that no ordinary person could match. She wasn't just an alien warrior, she was like me. For the first time, I saw past the smug arrogance and sharp words. I saw someone who had spent her entire life running, and I wasn't going to let that be my future. I exhaled sharply. "We have to take the Dominion down." Zyra raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And here I thought you just wanted to survive." I met her gaze. "Surviving isn't enough. Not if they keep doing this to people like us." A slow smile spread across her lips. "Now you're talking. We didn't have much. Just a stolen blaster, a half-dead comm device, and whatever knowledge Zyra had tucked away in that lethal mind of hers. But we had one advantage. The Dominion thought I was still theirs, and I was going to use that against them." 2 weeks later, we infiltrated a Dominion facility on the outskirts of Vyros 3. It wasn't easy. The security was tighter than I expected, and we barely made it past the perimeter without raising alarms. But inside, we found what we needed. Files on Project Echelon. On me. On hundreds of others like me. I skimmed the records, my stomach twisting. The Dominion wasn't just making operatives. They were harvesting them, sending them into battle without even telling them what they really were. I clenched my fists. "We have to stop this." Zyra placed a hand on my shoulder. "We will." And we did. We detonated the lab, taking out every trace of Project Echelon with it. The explosion lit up the sky of Vyros 3, and for the first time in my life I felt free. But the Dominion wouldn't stop. Not forever. So we didn't either. Months passed. Zyra and I became a team, taking down Dominion bases, exposing their operations, freeing others like us. I was no longer just a soldier. I was a ghost in their system, a name they whispered in fear. And Zyra was the only reason I had made it this far. One night, after a mission, we sat on the rooftop of a quiet outpost, watching the twin moons of a distant planet rise. She nudged me with her elbow. "You never told me what you'd do if this all ended." I thought about it. Once, I would have said go back to normal. But normal was a lie. I turned to her. "I think I'd keep going. There's too much to fix." She smirked. "Good answer." I hesitated, then added, "And maybe for once I'd stop running." Zyra's smirk softened. She reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Then maybe I'll stop running too." My breath hitched. We had been through hell together, fought, bled, nearly died more times than I could count. But here, in the quiet, I finally realized something. Zyra wasn't just my partner. She was my home. I leaned in. So did she. And for the first time, since this all began, since I learned what I was, since I became more than a soldier, I felt whole,